Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. Every year there's an election. And if you've ever thought about getting involved and want to speak up, stand up, and have a voice in the community and maybe fight for liberty, kind of help make Colorado a free state, if you will, then you might want to know what to do. You might have some ideas of your own, but you might be looking for some new platform planks, some ideas, some of the needs that are in the community that can actually make a real difference. So I'm here today with Natalie Menten, one of our great Liberty leaders in Lakewood and across Colorado, to kind of talk about some different platform planks, some issues that local candidates can talk about when they're running for office. And then if you win your election, here's what you can do to help improve the quality of life in your community. So thank you, Natalie, for being here. I'm excited to hear these.
Yes. Um, this is something that I've noticed over time. Elected people who run for office aren't quite sure what powers they're going to have if they get in there. What can I do? And really, these platform planks can be applied for activists too. One way or another, you can get these missions done. So, do you want to go through, or do you want me to go through?
I can start here. I think one of the biggest ones, of course, something we've been talking about for a long time, for months now, is lowering the mill levy rate. Of course, that's probably one of the most urgent aspects for people running for local office, for people who are liberty activists in the community to do, is get that local mill rate reduced. Provide meaningful property tax relief for people in your community, especially those on fixed incomes. People are being priced out of their homes, maybe small businesses who are being pushed out of the community because they can't afford these record high property taxes. So lots of videos out there, of course, on freestatecolorado.com. Most recent one as well about reducing the mill levy rate and kind of giving that game plan. So pretty straightforward there.
Okay.
What's the next one there, Natalie?
Well, this is one I've been passionate about for a very long time. That is government transparency, speaking about the financials. And governments have budgets, which is planning for the future. They have comprehensive annual financial reports, which looks at the history and is a 100-page document. But the reality is where you really get down to nitty gritty is to have the actual line by line detailed check register published on the internet, free and available for the public to see. It should have columns describing the cost center, object code. These are things government has in their records anyway. It's part of their accounting process. It should also have a description line. Descriptions help the be accountable to us, but it also helps for this aspect. When competitors want to sell a product, they're going to compete. The more that people know what the government is buying and seeing the detail on it, the more other bidders will come in and say, hey, I'd like to submit a proposal because I bet I can save you some money, therefore saving taxpayers money. This is a winning platform plank for somebody running for office. Maybe your government has it online, check and see. A lot of them don't. The more detail you can add to it, if it exists already, add more detail, functionality, add a download feature. That's a great one. You want me to go to item number 3?
Go for it.
Okay. All right. This kind of ties into the financials also. Government bodies have outside audits. Honestly, I kind of consider them a joke. Okay. I've also been an elected official where we had an internal auditor, and the internal auditor works separately. If you looked at an organizational chart, the auditor is over here off to the side. They're not a government body employee. They respond directly to the elected. Having an independent auditor, such as an elected auditor, is probably the best scenario because that person, one, can't be fired by the government body. The only way that elected auditor can really be fired is by the public themselves if they do not reelect or perhaps recall. I can't see that happening. But there's more to an auditor than just looking through the numbers. An auditor is also looking at the process and are things being followed, finding actually improvements, cost savings. So in many jurisdictions, you will not see an elected auditor. You've got your body, your lawmaking body. You've got maybe elected city clerk, but finding an elected auditor is a pretty rare thing. City and County of Denver has an elected auditor. So this is not a far-fetched idea to put it into your city, whether it's a city, in my case, Lakewood or Aurora or Pueblo or Grand Junction, all of these different places. depending on the factor, those choices can be made, what should they be compensated, things like that. But home rule municipalities should be able to do this. You want to go to item 4? Because I know you're a TABOR fan.
Awesome.
And you can talk about that.
Definitely. I mean, Taxpayer Bill of Rights, TABOR for short, is one of the most important protections Colorado taxpayers have. It's been keeping us free, more free than we would have been otherwise. It's been keeping more money in our pocketbooks. It's prevented us from becoming California. If you're newer to Colorado, if you're newer to liberty activism, Taxpayer Bill of Rights TABOR is one of the most important things to protect and expand, and in many cases, restore these protections to your local community. Unfortunately, since 1992, when TABOR was passed, deceptive ballot language, deceptive legislators, and deceptive authoritarian activists have really pulled the wool over a lot of voters' eyes to give up their TABOR protections and saying, "Hey, we need more money for schools. We need more money for this. We need more money for that." And unfortunately, some of the taxpayers bought into it. Some of the voters gave up these taxpayer protections. So restoring TABOR, that'll be a whole nother video series I'm sure we could get into, and providing that information that there's a lot out there. But Natalie, what can you tell me about the tax expenditure limitations?
Tax expenditure limitations, that's really a general term that's just used around the country. Because although the people that do not like TABOR want to get rid of it, state, oh, Colorado is the only one who has this strict limitation. Well, the fact is there are other states that have tax expenditure limitations. It's kind of a generic term. So if we take a look at other states, they may have sections of what our TABOR is, but we're not the only one that has this bizarre idea that government should actually live within its means, and to give it a reasonable amount of growth is versus unlimited growth is a good thing. So if somebody searches for TEL, which could be property tax specific, maybe you just want to cap property taxes, that instead of being perhaps called TABOR would be called a TEL. There's other revenues streams that come into the government. Income taxes. There are some that charge local income taxes. We in Colorado, that's prevented because TABOR prohibits it. Thank God. Otherwise, we have more of our hard-earned dollars being shifted and actually never making it into our pocket. It would go directly into the government's pocket because you get your check after the government, of course, gets their part. So that's a general term, and it can be flexible. TABOR is considered the gold standard, but there's other governments who haven't. Lots of different options to keep your government with its belt cinched tight to ensure that, it stays within the guidelines it needs to. And then if you don't mind, I'm going to jump into repealing grocery tax because this one I'm really, really passionate about. So we get taxed on everything. It starts with our income. If you have, savings account, government taking this piece. Well, there are some things that are just absolutely immoral to have government taking from the citizens. 2 of those fall under the same category. Grocery taxes, which grocery taxes are called in government groceries for home consumption. But then there's this other tax on consumable stuff, nutrients that we need to live. And that's food for immediate consumption. That would be, as an example, I like this example. Picture the person who's working 2 jobs and decides they're going to grab a quick bite in between the second job to pay the big property tax bill or the high rent they've got because of the high property tax bills. And they stop off at Subway sandwiches and they're going to have a 6-inch meatball sandwich. There is a full-blown tax if it's food for immediate consumption. So just jumping back, the state of Colorado has in the past charged tax on groceries you're going to bring home, not the restaurant food, but groceries bring home. They eliminated that tax, but then they came back with a bunch of things in 2012 called the Dirty Dozen. It's a set of bills meant to take more and more from our pocket without asking us, like TABOR says they should. The Dirty Dozen, which actually was 13 bills, but we didn't, I guess, want to name it the 13. So it was the Dirty Dozen. It was under Mark Ferrandino. It was in like 2010. I remember testing, the room was like packed. There were so many people who were going to get more tax money taken out of their pocket, and they didn't get a vote on it. It was a horrible set of bills. One of those increased the taxes on groceries for home consumption and created these crazy rules. So let me give you an example. If you bought apple juice, but the apple juice is less than, let's say, first of all, if it's over 50% content, whether it's apple juice or orange juice or something like that, if it's over 50% juice content, it's not taxable as a food for home consumption. But if it's less than 50%, so apple juice, quite often it won't be like maybe 100%, it's less. Let's say it's 48%. Now they consider that to be taxable. They wrapped it into a package called the pop and candy tax, but the rules within this thing are totally ridiculous. I mean, again, you got two apple juices sitting on a shelf. One of them's got 53% juice, and one has 48% juice. One would be taxed as junk food, while the other one would be not taxed at all for the home consumption part. So it made these crazy rules. Things like if it had flour, but it had sugar, but if it was processed, it'd be taxed. Example, if you got honey roasted peanuts, that's considered junk food. But if you got regular pudding, made stupid rules. And well, when the state passed all of these grocery taxes, cities fell in line. So all of these jurisdictions that said, oh, we don't tax groceries, all of a sudden we're taxing these cockamamie things that, you know, like granola bars, if they qualified or not for the tax. So that would be one of the very first things a city councilor can do. Talk about something that should be like a no-brainer as a platform, or to go out and do as an activist. If you got a pressure, whichever way, I don't care, do it, because it's immoral that groceries are taxed. But repealing the grocery tax is component A. But secondly, there's been this thing with food for immediate consumption means rich people eating food out. Therefore, they should get no break. They pay the full 7.5%, 8% you're paying. That is food that is being literally stolen from the mouths of babes, basically. Stolen off the kitchen table, out of the refrigerator, government, which has already taken X amount, and now they're taking grocery taxes. So this is really two components. Again, that's government world. One, you're bringing home in a grocery sack, you're going to make it. The other one is if you go to like the deli department at King Soopers and you buy prepackaged macaroni and cheese or whatever it may be, that would be considered immediate consumption. You're going to pay a higher tax. Get rid of these taxes. I would like to do a statewide initiative. Frankly, if I were ever to do one city statewide initiative, that would be it would be a complete strike of all taxes on food, whether it's immediate consumption or whichever it is. It's just a disgusting, absolutely disgusting, if I haven't said that, tax. It's regressive. People who have less of an income, more of their groceries are going to that. And let me give dollars. People think that grocery taxes don't amount to much. Well, here in Lakewood, I helped spearhead the repeal of the grocery tax. And in this case, it ended up forcing the government to do it because we were going to go to a ballot issue and it would have passed. Polling is ridiculous high on doing something like this. Totally positive. Calculated out, what does it save somebody if you repeal grocery taxes? Because I bet if you polled most people, they say, oh, it's pennies, it's pennies. It actually equates to 2 weeks of groceries for an average person. That's how much a person is losing because of taxes on food. That's food for home consumption. If you added in then a elimination of food for that immediate consumption, it would be even greater than that. There's just too many people. And the fact that the government wants to say, well, somebody can afford to eat a steak, or they're eating 99-cent hot dog at, 7-Eleven. I don't care. You know, those people shouldn't be taxed on those food products. So I know I went off on a little bit of a rant, but I'm really passionate about food taxes, and they should not exist whatsoever.
No, it's great. And I think you provided some information here, some data from Denver.
Yes,
So I'd
I
love to
did.
show that here to show people what that dollar amounts actually equal.
Yeah, and this is old data. I think this was 20, well, it's 2020 here. Um, City and County of Denver. I asked them for the records on what they were collecting with food and beverage tax. Now this would be food. So let's jump, and we don't have to jump back, but Denver allegedly doesn't charge tax on food for home consumption. So head of lettuce, those kind of things. But as I described, there's some carve outs. So some of those foods are taxed, like honey roasted peanuts or the fruit juice that's less than 50%. But their main thing is the food for immediate consumption, restaurants, takeout. They call it convenience foods. Again, picture a wrapped up Subway sandwich in the deli department at King Soopers. That's taxed at full pop. So I asked it, City and County of Denver, what is the collection for that food for immediate consumption? Denver is literally, again, taking the food out of the mouth of Denverites or anyone shopping there to the tune of $160 million a year in calendar year 2019. That was COVID, partly. People, correct? Was it 20? So
Well,
people would have
2020.
actually 2020, end of 2019. So it dropped in 2020. So looking at that, 160 in a typical year and a year where we had government mandated shutdowns, including restaurants, they still took over $100 million a year taxing people on food, which would have ultimately stayed in the consumer's pocket, bought them more food, whether they chose to eat a soy salad or a hot dog or whatever food for immediate consumption. So I wanted to bring that up because we're not talking pennies. Again, just grocery taxes, depends what component. That was worth 2 weeks of groceries. Here's so much money that the government kept. It's pretty sad, actually, I think, frankly.
So the 2 weeks of groceries, is that per year or so
Yeah,
in terms of how much? So the amount of taxes you're paying on food per year would provide an additional 2 weeks worth of grocery food.
that's right. And I've checked this figure multiple times. I even, because I am so weird with trying to verify my figures, these are all my food tax receipts for, can you see how thick it is? Someday I gotta throw this away. But I've checked these figures over and over and over. And it's 2 weeks of groceries that families lose because there's a tax on food for home consumption.
Wow.
And that
It
doesn't
is.
even count the rest.
It is entirely immoral that these politicians think they can take or add to the cost of food. I mean, a requirement for life. I mean, come on. I mean, people with families, people with lots of kids, people who are struggling to get by, they still got to eat. If the government, if we're entitled to anything, it's as individuals, as individual people, it's the ability to buy our food without the government adding on an extra fee on or tax on top of it to take to increase that cost. I mean, it is absolutely one of the worst taxes out there.
I remember when we were back in like 2009, circulating to get rid of the food tax here in Lakewood. And we'd stand out front of the grocery stores. They were more lenient then. And we would, you're supposed to wait for people to come out of the store, but sometimes we'd be catching them on the way in and they'd go, I don't pay a sales tax on groceries. They would come out of that grocery store, make a beeline for the petition and go, let me sign that. Because they'd finally picked up on, they just didn't even pick up what they were losing.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, and I can only imagine too, $160 million. And of course, 2019 population's gone up quite a bit since then. And that's just Denver. I can't even imagine what it'd be statewide in terms of the money that people are paying on top of the food they're buying. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. So I just want to show that list one last time here at the end. I think there's a lot of good information here, a lot of good platform planks that are very relatively moderate. These aren't extreme positions. They are positions that are going to benefit working Coloradans of every single, type of person that's out there is going to benefit from things like this. It's going to keep more money in their pocket. It's going to create more transparency for the government and allow people to live a little bit freer lives. So be interested to see if anybody viewing this has any comments or ideas of their own. Please leave a comment on YouTube or wherever you're watching this or on the website. Just hit reply. I'd be curious to see any other ideas that you have out there.
Yeah, and I'll say for all of these, put more money into the taxpayers' pockets, item 1 through 5. Number 3 probably would be some kind of a comp stipend for an auditor. But I suspect if that was for a regular city, let's say 10 or $13,000 is actually what a city councilor typically gets in a year for their pay. The elected auditor, the same amount, would easily pay for itself. And I bet there's some people in some cities that would actually volunteer and not even take the pay if they could to be the city auditor. I probably would.
Well, awesome, Natalie. I really appreciate these ideas. I really appreciate all your enthusiasm and activism over the years. And, I think there's bright things ahead for Colorado. And first step is, putting those plans in place so people know where to end up. What are the goals at the end of the tunnel here? So awesome goals. And it'll be nice to see people take these up as part of their campaign platform in the years to come.
Yeah, because the last thing you want to go in is being a rubber stamp. We got plenty of rubber stamps in government. We need people with liberty planks. And again, activists can even use these, but working it from both sides, elect some people to do this, run for office with these. And if you don't get it done on the inside, get it done on the outside, because I know that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Natalie. Anything else you'd like to leave us with on this one?
No, I think that's good for now. I'm sure we'll come back with some more.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and we'll see you next time.